Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I'm your host, JC Granger. I have the pleasure of having Rob Auld, who is the Chief Revenue Officer of Readymode, with us. Rob, thanks so much for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then what is it that Readymode does?
Sure. So again, my name is Rob. I am the Chief Revenue Officer of Readymode. I have been in technology for my entire career, starting at a large telecommunications company in Canada, flowing through into SaaS, and now culminating at the Chief Revenue Officer at Readymode. Readymode is an outbound sales platform. Cold calling is not dead. We have seen and have been wildly successful at helping companies expand and grow their business by helping them cold call better. And that's really what we do.
Is it more AI? Is it a platform for humans to use? So
It's
paint us the
absolutely,
picture. Like, how do they interact with it?
yeah, absolutely. When you're outbound calling, the very worst thing that you can do is have downtime. That dial voicemail, dial voicemail, dial voicemail. We eliminate that for you entirely. There are no voicemails. We give your outbound folks connects. That's really what our job is, and we use a predictive engine to decide which to call at what point and maximize your productivity while you're doing your outbound calling.
How does it do that? I mean, like, is it like, does it have some sort of like AI predictability historically knowing how often a certain number does, if not ever pick up or something like that?
Yeah, there's a significant algorithm in behind the scenes. So based on the data that you upload, we're able to sift and sort that data and then make intelligent decisions on who to call when. Yeah, it's a very interesting algorithm.
That is really cool. Yeah, I could see that. I get where you're going with that, right? Because if like a phone number never picks up and some system knows that, there's got to be a history there, right? And then if another one does, but only during these certain hours, I imagine it optimizes for that kind of outbound, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's where we're going for sure. Right now, it's really a function of the data that you upload, and then us being able to know whether you've connected with that data or not, and then it decides how often and when to call. The other very interesting thing it does is it matches the area code of the folks that you're calling. So if you're calling into Dallas and you're in California, we'll match that area code together. One of the most difficult parts of cold calling at scale these days is what we call DID health or phone number health. Everybody sees the spam scam likely, and that's really
Mhm.
important that we avoid scam spam. That like we're highly supportive of that. But when you're legitimately calling for a reason and you have consent to make that call, we help make sure that you're only calling on numbers that are not spam scam. And so that significantly increases your connect
I
rate.
imagine that raises your costs a bit, right? Because I just from what I know about marketing industry and the background tech, it's
Yeah,
like if you want the good stuff, like if it's like good domains or good emails and whatnot, like it's the same thing, right? You're paying a
absolutely.
premium to offer this to your clients. It sounds like.
Absolutely. And what we sell our clients are connects. That's really what we are about. We maximizing your productivity of your sales team is what we do. And it's really then a value sell for us, right? Because you care, you're paying your agent or your SDR or your BDR far more than you're paying for outbound software. So
Mhm.
keeping them busy all the time is what our mission is.
So, what brought you to Ready Mode? I mean, you're the chief revenue
Yeah.
officer. Were you? Did they headhunt you from someone else in studio, or would you start in the mailroom? Like, what's
Yeah, I mean, let me back up. So I started at TELUS, which is a very large telecommunications provider here in Canada, and I spent my first 12 years in sales there. Now, let me be clear. When I started, I was one of the worst salespeople that has ever been around, and I will say I can bring the receipts and bring character witnesses who will also say I was.
It was just not. This was not your game.
This
Okay,
I
got
was
it.
not good. But over that year, I learned that hey, if I watch people that were better at this than I was, I noticed something. They did the same thing the same way over and over and over again. And I really built that muscle. I really built a muscle of create the process, do the same thing the same way over and over and over and over again. And that sort of principle has really led me through my career. I rose through the ranks at TELUS, ending putting together the wireline people with the wireless people, reorganizing, about $1 billion business. From there, I wanted to get into SaaS. And so I did some various stuff, but got into a company called SOTI, SOTI, and they do mobile device management. Interesting company, grew that company, and then went to another company called Auvik, AUVIK, and they do network monitoring and management. Very cool company, doing great things out there. They were formative because I was working with some of the smartest people that I've ever worked with. And we took it from 16 to kind of 32, and then got a fairly large exit. So about $250 million US exit.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was great. And then from there, took 6 months off. People said take some time off sort of in between. I hated every minute of that 6 months, by the way. I'm not built for retirement. There's nothing in me that
Yeah.
says I should ever retire. And
No.
that's how I got.
There's a difference between retiring financially and retiring physically, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Big
Yeah.
difference.
Big difference. So yeah, so I am built to do work, and that's okay. I really really love it. And then for me, I've been in the sales game a lot, and now as chief revenue officer, I run the whole thing. And so I've
Yeah.
hired a brilliant marketer. I've hired some great folks, brilliant folks in support. We've got great salespeople, great sales leaders, and my job is orchestrating it so it all works together.
So let me ask you a question. When you have a CRO, a chief
Yeah.
revenue officer like yourself, does that replace the need for a CMO because it all links in? Like, is it like CRO and then you have because you take over marketing and sales divisions, or am I misreading that as far as your responsibilities?
No, I'm responsible for anybody who talks to a customer. I'm responsible for, including support.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I run the whole thing. So out of our 70-ish or so folks, I have about 40 people that are reporting to me in all kind of aspects of the business, including marketing, sales, and
Yeah.
support. Yeah.
So I do have a question as far, and I'm sure you're getting this question, and I
Yeah,
guarantee you've had meetings about this too.
totally.
Is how do you deal with the very fast moving technology of outbound like AI voice agents? Is it
Mhm.
something you're going to saddle and jump on that horse and figure out a way to integrate it? Or are you going to leave it to the side and say, no, we work with humans? What is your plan and how have you guys addressed that? Because it's going fast.
It is, and there are significant regulatory challenges with outbound voice agents.
Mm,
Significant. So our position is that is not actually a legal phone call by the FTC, FCC decisions, and so we are not pursuing outbound AI agents. Certainly, inbound AI agents are something that we would consider. It's a very different regulatory environment
yeah.
on inbound. Pre-recorded voice, which is what AI really is classified under, is just a no-no. Like that is, there are, your carriers won't deal with it. There's a bunch of significant regulatory challenges with pre-recorded voice.
Yeah, I've looked into that. I mean, as a marketer, right, you always have to stay
Yeah,
on top
yeah,
of the
absolutely.
laws, right? You get no spam stuff. I mean, a lot of
Correct,
people assume certain things might be illegal or legal, but they
correct.
assume incorrectly because there are caveats to law, like B2C versus B2B has completely different laws
Absolutely.
surrounding it. When it comes to outbound like that, what have you noticed in the laws when it comes to a B2B outbound? Because I do know that there is a huge difference between calling people's personal numbers versus calling
Uh,
businesses.
100%. Yeah, the regulatory challenges are very different in both of those spaces. However, our position right now, and that may change as the regulatory environment changes. As we know, this particular administration they changed their minds a little bit, and so things
Yeah,
have actually changed
squirrel.
inside inside the inside just the 100 days. Things have kind
Hmm.
of changed. So, um,
Yeah.
but certainly B2B, far less regulatory environment. However, what I would say is, if I look at Microsoft and Google, for example, there's not maybe explicit laws around email, but
Mhm.
Microsoft and Google have put up significant barriers around spam email, for example.
Yeah.
And so we take a conservative approach to the regulatory environment, even in the B2B space, because it's not even just government, it's also carriers. That phone call has to be transmitted over a carrier. And if they start getting complaints about traffic, it changes the dynamics very, very, very quickly.
This brings up another question actually, because I'm curious what it's like to be. Are you a Canadian-based company, or because I know you're in Canada, but what is it like jumping across the borders when it comes to this type of industry? Like dealing
Yeah.
with the regulations in Canada versus the US. Like, how do you guys manage that, and where do you fall in that?
Yeah, the good news is the regulatory environments are fairly coordinated. There are some difference, CAFTA versus, GDPR in Europe
Mhm.
versus what we see out of the US, TCPA laws. And then we actually have to take it right down to the state level, frankly. So it's not good enough. Inside
Mm.
the United States, there are TCPA laws that vary based on states.
Can you
So
tell the audience what TCPA stands for?
that's a
Or,
you
or, or what it means in at least, because some of these they're long.
they're long. Yeah. So yeah. So what it basically says is there are laws that are associated with how you're allowed to market to people over voice. Uh,
Got it.
and that's and email and a bunch of others, a bunch of other ways that we market. And really at the heart of it, what they're saying is we want people to consent for you to be marketing to them. That's
Yeah.
like they want the hand raisers to go up and say, I'm interested in XYZ, and then that gives you permission to call them. And that's really what it means. So inside Canada, US is Canada is just another sort of check mark on compliance because inside the US there are really 20-ish or so different flavors of those laws based on what state you're calling.
So let me ask you a question. So first, how long did you say you have been at Ready Mode?
So I've been at Ready Mode for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Okay. So in the 2.5 years, because I always tell people I don't believe in rainbows and unicorns, right?
Yeah.
But that's usually a question I have for founders because the beginning is very tumultuous. You've come in, I don't know how old is the company total?
Company's 10 years. I want to be clear, and I want to shout out to our founder. So this is 100% bootstrapped.
Oh
He
wow.
solved his own problem inside his own business,
Okay.
and Ready Mode was basically profitable from month one. So month one on, we have been growing and profitable. So
That's smart.
yeah,
Okay, but what kind of challenges have you dealt with in your
yeah,
tenure?
absolutely.
Because even in 2.5 years, again, because you deal with regulations, you deal with software, which I mean, give it a minute and it'll break, right? Like there's always back and forth. What are some of the bigger struggles that you've had personally when you came to Ready Mode that you've had to fires
Yeah.
you've had to put out?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that question even more broadly than just Ready Mode. Ready Mode was very much startup, right? We've gone from, 40 people when I got here to about 70 people where we are now. And that startup to scale up is particularly brutal. It's really
Mhm.
hard on people. And there's really good reasons why it's hard on people because, it used to be the CEO sat in the middle of the office and everybody sort of sat around. And when Jay said, I want to do this, everybody heard it directly from the horse's mouth. And, it just happened. And people felt really involved and people's scopes were very broad. Once you bring in a CRO, by definition, my job is to narrow scope, right?
Hmm.
Focus on not silos, but you want to limit the salesperson from doing marketing and sales and a little bit of success and a lot of support. You want to really start to streamline what it is that they do and narrow their focus so that way they get really, really good at one thing and doing
Mhm.
that one thing over and over and over again. What that leads to is frustration because I used to be involved in everything. Now I'm
Yeah.
involved in one thing and I like being involved in everything. And so the number one challenge of coming in startup with a mission to scale up is how do those existing people feel and how do you bring them along for the journey and how do you make them feel that they're not valued, right? Because their skill set used to be, I used to be able to do 100 different things, sort of, right? And those were really, really valuable because there was nobody else to do that work. Now I've got to do this one thing and I've got to do it really, really well. I'll take HR as a great example of this, right? In HR, when you're in a startup, you are literally involved in every meeting, doing everything. As we scale up, we start to segment who's running, the business, who's doing the recruiting, who's doing right. And as you start to narrow scope,
Mhm.
those folks can feel diminished, and that is a significant, significant challenge.
Yeah, the efficiency goal comes with unintended consequences, right?
100%.
But it's necessary, right? Because like you said, it's painful going from here to here, right? You know, I've been doing marketing 25 years. Where people bring me in, so to speak, is when they've kind of plateaued. And
Absolutely.
they're because they're like, well, listen, I mean, we're doing great on referrals. Like we've got, but there's a ceiling to all of that, right? Without a scalable solution to, you're not going to break through that glass, you know?
Absolutely. So that is the number one challenge that I've had to face. And it's not a them problem. I want to be perfectly clear about this.
Yeah.
It's the rug got pulled out, right? I was very, very
Mhm.
proficient at doing all this stuff. And now this guy has come in and said that's not what I'm supposed to be doing anymore, right? That's an us problem, but it is a necessary problem. I also call the scale, I have 4 kids. They're all either teenagers or post-teenagers. The scale up is very much like a teenager organization. You haven't quite fully formed into that, like what you're going to be when you grow up. There's still a mountain of experimenting, and you're still a startup, right? You're still sort of treated as a startup, but you've got all the growing pains and the frustration so it's just a very challenging time in any organization.
Yeah, I like that analogy, right? In that kind of the teenage years, right? The formidable years
Yeah.
of what are you gonna be? Because like you're adult enough to be autonomous and make decisions and be creative, but you're not mature enough to really have the whole thing down yet. And there's still things that have to be adjusted before it becomes what it's gonna be.
And the risk profile is very significant at this point, right? At start, 5 employees, your risk profile, your ability to take chances, your ability to do very, very different. When I think of the stress on Jay, right? He used to be responsible for 5 humans, now responsible for 75 humans. Decisions that he makes affects a whole lot more people in a whole bunch of different ways. And that adds to the complexity of this. It also, as that risk increases, right? The weight increases as well.
Mhm.
So that's yeah, it's a challenge for folks like Jay, any founder, any CEO.
True. Uh, so I'm a marketing guy by trade, which we've already
Yeah.
established. So I have to ask the marketing question, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of
fire away.
people who listen, this is a very tech, nerdy audience, right? Like myself. What types of here's the thing, you guys are obviously great at building what you build.
Yeah.
How are you telling people about it, right? Like what types of marketing are you doing right now that's working, and what types have you done that just absolutely fell on their face?
Yeah, so I have one of the best marketing people I've ever worked with us here, and that makes my job in marketing really, really simple because she's just so much smarter and better at this than I would ever be. Um, but a couple things. So she has really moved us from a paid motion where it's been a lot of paid, a lot of optimizing Google, a lot of optimizing, really optimizing paid. What she has done brilliantly is moved us into segmenting or enhancing our inbound leads through brand and organic. And it's really interesting. I had a boss actually at Avik who was very, very smart. He talked about the expected value of leads coming into an organization. And really what we're optimizing for is what is that expected value of leads? And I can tell you the work that she's done has doubled the expected value of leads because once she's done this fabulous job at building the brand, people already know. They already know what they're coming to look for. And
Mhm.
our speed to close, our closing ratios, the deal values skyrocket because it's organic traffic coming into us. And that has worked unbelievably well. The second bucket that she and I work on a lot is we put in our budget experiments and we expect experiments to fail. And I don't like, I almost, I've said this to her a whole bunch of times and she said it back to me. I don't want you to think of this as marketing budget. Like, I don't want any perverse incentive to kill the experiments budget,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't want to nail you on cost per lead, right? Or cost for brand or trade show or whatever sort of tactic that we're doing. I want this to be like like never ever touch this budget because I want you to go test whatever you need to test to maximize brand efficacy. And you need to tell us kind of what part of that budget needs to sit in that experiments bucket because otherwise there is this, I'll have a perverse incentive to kill it. Finance will have this perverse incentive to kill it, right? And we
Yeah.
can't. We have to keep that budget going because it's really about the future of the business. It's the things that we're doing way out in front that are going to drag the organization ahead.
It's your DARPA.
100%.
Right? It's your
And
DARPA division. It's gonna get crazy, but you gotta keep it.
you
You
got
gotta
to
keep
keep
it.
it.
It's
And
gonna
I
it's gonna
want to be,
suck money out, but
yeah,
you do.
you, and we'll do nine things that don't work and one thing that does. And our expectation is that one thing
Amazing.
pays it back, right?
That's a VC model. Like
Yeah,
there, it's
absolutely.
like you look at Silicon Valley. That's where I grew up, right? And
Yeah,
it's like that culture out there. That's exactly how they think. Everything is just one giant experiment. I think that's what a lot of people miss about the VC community is that they know for a fact that there's a 90% chance that whoever they give their money to is going to lose all of it. But they
right.
don't care because they're like, hey, listen, that 10th person is going to unicorn out and I'm going to cover all my losses, right? It's gambling. It is organized gambling, but it works,
100%. And the risk when you have salespeople in charge of marketing, and the thing that I am consciously incompetent of, is it can't all just be about leads this month, this quarter. It can't just be about the number to, you have to give these folks the creative license to go out in front, build the brand the way they want to build it. So that way it drags that organization forward. And that has been, another thing that she's done a great job at kind of smacking me around to go, hey, wait a second, Auld. Like it's not just about what happened yesterday. We've got to, short-term focus, but we gotta widen our lens here.
Well, let me ask you a question. And your own software, are you even able to use your own product for your own marketing, or do you come across regulatory issues where you can't even do it
Yeah.
for yourself right now,
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. So I'll tell you a little story. So one of the things I've spent a lot of time with, I dislike the SDR role just in general. And I don't really want to get into the debate of should it sit in marketing or should it sit in sales. It just shouldn't exist in terms of inbound. And sifting and sorting leads to me is insulting to our customers. Qualifying the customer to me is almost insulting. In this world of maximum amounts of information, when a customer puts up their hand and says, I'm ready for a demo, we should give that customer a demo. We should not put them through a process by which we sift and sort and decide whether they're worthy of a demo or not. And we've actually tried this on our own. So I actually use an AI. If you go to our website, readymode.com, you can go in there and all of our inbound leads do not come in through forms. They actually come in through our AI tool. And the AI tool will basically answer any question that you have, but it has a mission. And that mission is get you into a demo.
Mm-hmm. Is
So
it like in a chat? And is it like a chat thing on the
little
bottom?
chat, but anytime you
Yeah.
go to a form, it'll just pull that thing up and and you'll be able to book your meeting right then and there. So it does all the sifting and sorting and it does all the stuff for us. Now, what does that mean for the future of the SDR? It means the future of the SDR is they have nothing to do but outbound. That's all they do all day long is they outbound. So absolutely we can use our own technology. And very quickly, if somebody doesn't show up to a meeting, they flip into the SDR queue and we're on, right? We're on them. Now, what has all this done? Our conversion rates at Readymode are insanely good, like to the point where you probably so lead to win conversion rates are that like Q1 over 35%.
Oh, wow.
Lead to win.
Yeah.
Just lead to yeah. So opt to win, we got over 50%, right? So that's how qualified the with no human interaction whatsoever, right? Leads coming in over 50% close to win. Now, our outbounders are basically taking about 25% of the business are now outbound. In the thing that everybody said is dead, 25% of our MRR, new MRR last quarter came from 3 people that all they do are outbound. So outbound is not dead. You just have to be smarter about it.
Yep.
It is like brand way out here. It is something that should be part of the marketing mix. It absolutely
Yeah.
has to be part of that marketing mix.
It's funny. I hear people tell me they're like, well, cold outbound email is dead, or LinkedIn automation has killed,
Yeah,
the relationships in that. And I hear all the naysayers, and they're like, the outbound voice doesn't work. I'm like, okay. My response is always no, it doesn't work for you. And to be fair, it actually can. I've always said it's not about what you do, it's how you do it, right?
absolutely.
I mean, the amount of people who come to me and they go, "Well, we tried cold outbound email." I said, "Let me ask you a question. Where did you get the list?" And they say this. I'll say, "Cool. Where'd you clean the list?" And they go, "What?" I go, "There it is, right there. Okay." Or I'd say, "Where did you send it out?" And they go, "Oh, through our Gmail." I'm like, "On your regular domain?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Cool. Let me ask you a question. At what point did you start seeing a drop off in replies from your prospects?" And they're
Um,
like, a while ago, like, we've actually been struggling with that. How did you know that? I'm like, because it's going to their spam.
yeah,
They are still interested. They just haven't heard from you. You just think they have. Like,
a
these are
hun-
the things yeah.
100%. And when it comes to cold calling,
Hmm.
so my first sales job, here's what the training was. There's a yellow pages, and for the kids in the audience, yellow pages was a
Yeah.
book of phone numbers of businesses.
Hmm.
Okay, and there's your phone. Start calling. Right. That was my sort of cold calling. What drove me to make the call? The fact that I had nothing else in my toolkit. So
Hmm.
I was basically
Necessity.
I was basically starved into doing the thing that is miserable to do. That is how we have to organize the SDR BDRs today. They have to virtually be, starved of any other tasks except for this one task, which is really some sort of warm, cold outreach, some combination of those two things. The second we open up inbound, second we, it's, sift and sort, all of their focus will move to that sifting and sorting because it's not miserable. It's not
Hmm.
it's not a tough part of the job. That outbound is a tough part of the job. Now, what's in the future? Why do they do it? Why should they do this? And for me, it's because this has been true my entire life. Those folks who can do the outbound are ultimately the best, most talented, most competent salespeople in the future. So this is a training ground for these folks where they are going to get some fabulous experience. They're going to get some rough experience and rejection, but they're also going
Hmm.
to get some fabulous experience around. I've got to open this quickly. I've got to get their attention quickly. I got to
Yeah.
refine a pitch. I got to think about my process. I got to do a bunch of this stuff that only makes them better when they're in that AE, AM type role in the future.
So let me ask you a question about, I mean, since, it is called the future of
Yeah,
BizTech, let's talk about your future, right? As
yeah, yeah,
far as the company, I guess, from that point of view,
yeah,
if we were to have this podcast again in 12 months,
yeah,
what would, in your brain, skipping forward, what would you have to tell me? Like, what new features were launched? What new technology were you working on? Is there anything you can give us as a
yeah.
preview? Like, where do you want to be in 12 months, whether it be growth, because you're a revenue officer, or technology? What is it?
Yeah. So I think we are really, we are very much, we've been out there. Our go to market is highly, highly efficient. We are really changing to product led, and that is going to be really, really interesting in that transition. What does it mean? We're going to have a product led motion where we let people in and they can buy right where they are. Our thesis around push people, give people more access to the product earlier, let them sift in, has proven to be wildly successful. So then the next logical step is let them, if they don't want to talk to a human to purchase, we should allow them to just purchase, remove as much friction from that sales process as possible. And so I think that's going to be transformative in the business because it's going to teach us an awful lot very, very quickly about a bunch of how our customers interact and what they do and why. The second big bucket for us, and I can't get too much into details here, but I'll kind of give you the tease.
Come on, Rob.
So if you think of what we do right now in marketing, right? We're really at the top of that funnel. And
Yeah.
we solve a real top of the funnel problem for a bunch of our customers. And that's really where we live. That's where, and what problem do we solve? How do we help you make more money? At the very base of it, that's the problem that we solve. And we do that by creating some demand. As we develop AI, and as we go through our AI journey, we're going to push further and further down the funnel. We already have you on the call with your customer. How do we help you in that call convert at a higher rate? Because then we take that productivity where I need less leads, I need less calls, I need less because I'm getting such a higher conversion rate. And we think and let me back up. Based on what we've done with AI, we are experts. Like we know how to do it. If you go to our website today, it is a very um, advanced AI in comparison to
It's an engaging experience
it
from
is. It's really an interesting experience. But we also know that it's not ready without humans. It is
Mhm.
not ready without humans. I want to be perfectly clear here. And so we think the combo of AI plus human coach will be transformative for these SDRs. There are other solutions in the market, but they may not be as real time as what we are thinking about how to make AI even more effective.
Got it. Yeah, I'm excited to see where you guys are here. And it is challenging to go that more product route, which actually I'm a little not surprised, but as a revenue officer, this is it's not that it's out of your scope. It's that it starts to drift away for where you get the more product, like the it had a product kind of things. Because so I guess my final question for you personally is
Yeah.
this is knowing that you're going more product heavy, do you have someone already that is the big product person that you are going to defer a little bit more to now? Like,
Yeah.
how do you loop that? Because that's a pivot from where things being centered under the revenue side more.
Yeah, and it's funny because I posted about this on LinkedIn too. You know, great go-to-market cannot overcome bad product. And
Mhm.
and if that is true, right? And this is at scale, right? Like we can sell
Yeah.
anything, we have to fudge it, we can make up demos, like there's stuff that we can do, but ultimately the company won't grow because the churn, you just can't outrun the churn, right? So if that is true, product has always been part of revenue, right? If the statement I made before is true, product has always been a key component of revenue. The problem in the past is the friction between product and revenue oftentimes.
Yeah, I was gonna. That's what I was getting at. I was like, I've seen it, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you gonna do
So,
that?
so the good news is that I have this bias towards great product and great go to market is one plus one equaling 10, right?
Mhm.
And so, because I have that bias, and because our chief product officer has that bias, I don't really care who leads that. I care about our customers getting the experience that they want. Care about NPS. I care about maybe non-traditional things that CROs might not care about. In fact, I'm an advocate of paying executives largely on NPS, right? Like, some revenue, NPS. Like, I think that matters across the entire C-suite, VP suite. And
Mhm.
so that's how we're going to overcome it. We're going to orient ourselves around what drives the best customer experience.
I love that. Um, if you could give one piece of advice to any other revenue officers out there,
Yeah.
what would it be? Based on everything you've gone through in your career, what is like the key? Because you've had some good zingers here in this one. I mean, if it was me, I'd already pick out a couple that I like, but I want to hear what is your best piece of advice.
So startup or scale up, you've got to inculcate the entire company data first. We have to be operating from a common set of facts. There are a bunch of egos in the room. There are a bunch of smart people in the room, but I've always loved you're entitled to your opinion, you're not entitled to your own facts. And
Mhm.
rooting ourselves in a common data set where we are all looking at the same thing the same way over and over and over and over again just takes the emotion out of the room. And we can fight about a piece of data, but what I don't want to be fighting about is the source of that data. I want to be fighting about, well, you look at it this way, I look at it that way. Align on a common set of data that we all look at, that we all trust, and make your decisions based on that. And that will um, it will focus your energy on the stuff that matters, not the personalities, not am I hurting your feelings, not am I, all a bunch of nonsense that we all have to deal with.
I think I love that. Now I'm going to tell you what my favorite thing is
Yeah,
though.
fire away.
Because
Yeah,
for me, with my favorite piece of advice, or even not, it wasn't even advice, it's just much as you telling us something that you do. And I have personal experience with this. My last job before I started my agency, um, I was the head of experimental marketing, which
yeah,
didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. I had a quick little story. I had a buddy who sent me his resume, and he said, "Hey, he's like, no one's picking this up." He's like, and he was a marketing guy. He's like, "Why isn't anyone?" He's like, "Is there anything you can help me with, like to?" Which was smart, reach out to someone, get a fresh set of eyes on it, right? And I said, I said, yeah, it's not funny enough. And he goes, what? And I said, it's not funny enough. And he's like, dude, it's a resume. I'm like, I know. And I was like, and I said, here's the thing, man. Your only job when trying to get a job is getting from the big stack to the little stack.
yep,
Because my buddy was incredible in person.
yeah,
Like there is a 0% chance he wouldn't get the job if he got an interview.
yep,
And so I told him, I said, you don't have to worry about anything else other than get from the big stack, little stack. And I said, and he goes, and he fights me on it. I said, you know what? How about this? I said, I'm gonna prove it. I'm gonna make him a ridiculous resume. It's gonna be absolutely, completely out there. And I said, I'm gonna send it out, and we'll see what offers I get. Right. And so I did, and it was, and I'll send it to you sometime if you ever want to see
yeah,
it.
yeah, for sure.
It's classic, right? It had a cover letter, there was graphs, and it was just jokes and all this other stuff. And because I just didn't care, because I already had a good job at the time, so I didn't care. And I
Yeah,
came from this position of like not trying, and so I sent this thing out, and the amount of responses I got were insane. I got calls back from companies that said, "Listen, we don't have any positions open." But this was amazing. We sent it to everyone, and we will absolutely call you if we can do this. And then one company, I get a call from an assistant of this larger tech company in
yeah,
downtown Denver, and she says, "Hey, our CEO wants to meet with you at this restaurant." And so after about an hour and a half with this guy at the restaurant, at the end he says, "Listen, we don't have any positions open." And I kind of interrupted him. I was like, "Oh, it's totally fine." He's like, "No, no, you don't understand." He's like, "We're just going to create something for you." He goes, "There is no scenario where I let your brain not be in this company." And so he
yeah,
created this
very cool.
position called head of experimental marketing, right? Which it reminds me of what you've done a little bit,
Yeah,
giving that leeway to your marketing person and saying, having a budget for experiments. And literally my job, he said, just whatever comes out of your head, do that. He goes, I'll pay for it.
yeah.
And that was amazing. And so I guess my point is that the one circling back, I think if there's one piece of advice that I would give other people based on what you said
Oh, absolutely.
is if you are in a good enough position financially, create that experimental marketing budget. Come up with crazy shit. Who cares? Yeah, okay, it's 90% chance it's going to fail, but you're going to know that failed. You're going to know why, and you never know what that's going to lead to. The microwave came from the space program. Like they weren't trying to make it. It just they're like, "Oh yeah, that we use this thing over here." And they're like, "Hey, that actually could be really good for dinners."
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
No, serendipity in the scientific method is a thing, right? Some of the
Mhm.
most important inventions ever discovered have been through eureka or serendipity moments. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, how can the audience find you personally? You
Yeah.
never know who's listening, right? It could be some big deal in the wings. And then how would they find the company?
So readymode.com is the company. Highly recommend you check out our website. For me, my email address is just rob.a@readymode.com, and I'm available on LinkedIn, Rob Auld on LinkedIn. So that's how they can connect with me.
That's awesome. And listen, for everybody who's watching right now, thank you so much for watching another episode of the Future of BizTech. And if you like what you've seen or hear, if you're listening on podcasts, go ahead and give it a like, a share, follow it, all that fun stuff, because that is how nerds like us find cool podcasts like this. Rob, thank you so much again for being on the show. And I look forward to talking to you a little more about Ready Mode.
You got it. Thanks so much.